Welcome back to another episode on the Hermitcraft server, and between this episode and the last I've been working on the area around the animal pens and it's now all finished. I've filled this all in with sand, I've added some palm trees, I've put glowstone around the outside as well so we don't use too many torches, and I've also built a third pagoda above the entrances to the cookers. So this one has a few missing blocks with leaves instead, some glowstone so it lights up the area underneath, and I didn't put any wall blocks in there or anything like that, but it's a mixture of the two different leaf types. And I've also joined it to the beach. This was a suggestion in the comments on one of the previous videos to make the sandy area around the animal pens meet up with the beach here, and I think that's a really good idea. This place looks really good now, and we should look at it from an aerial view. The whole time I was doing the animal breeding pens project I was using lots of wheat and had a very simple little farm set up. I had 9 tilled soil blocks in a row and I'd walk across them like this and just hold down right click, and then I'd do the same with the bone meal. But the thing with this is that every time I use the bone meal it seems to use 11, so there's 9 blocks, and if you look at my hotbar I've got 55 seeds and I had a full stack of each one, so I've used 9 of those and I've used 11 bone meal, and I think this is just something to do with the way the client communicates with the server, so there's a little bit of lag with using the bone meal and I lose a couple, and I'm not really bothered by that because we got tons of bones from the skelly farm back at spawn. So what I thought I could do to improve the efficiency of this is add some pistons. So I'd go across and plant, then I'd walk back, I'd switch to bone meal and grow them all, then I'd walk back again and harvest them. And by the way, this is a lot faster than using the wheat machine that we have in town, the bread maker. So anyway, I thought I could cut out the walking back the third time to harvest all of it by adding some pistons. So now when you stand on the pressure plate you get all of those back. And then you walk across again, and then walk back, and then you stand on the pressure plate. But at the moment there's still a few problems with it. One you can see there is that all the seeds and wheat and stuff land on top, so I might develop this a little bit further in the future, but for now I want to move on to the mob spawner. But some of the ideas that I do have is to make the walls bigger here so that all the drops land down here, and perhaps I'll actually stand closer to it, so when I walk back and forth I'll actually pick up the items that have been harvested by the pistons. And an idea for that would be to put a block behind me, maybe some blocks with what are they called, trapdoors on, so although I'll be leaning back against them it'll keep me in range of this block and I'll be able to pick up every item. And the other thing to do would be to have some more redstone underneath this pressure plate, because this is very basic wiring, nothing too complicated going on at all. So when I stood on it the pistons would push out with a 2-tick pulse, so that they would push up and then retract, because if it was one it would leave them extended like this. So it would do a 2-tick pulse and this would blink up and down very quickly, and then I could stay on the pressure plate like I am now, but they would already be down. So at the moment when I do this and I stand on the pressure plate they stay up, and that kind of slows you down a little bit. I guess I can walk straight back off, but anyway, that's something that I want to do in the future. I'll think about it a little more, see if I can improve any ideas. So now we can move on to doing the mob spawner project, and for this there's going to be a lot of digging, so I'm going to need some picks. I've made one already, I've got an efficiency 4 one which is back at the base, and I'm here to do my second one, so let's see what we get. There we go, level 46. Let's hope for something good. Oh, that's brilliant, exactly what I wanted. So here are the picks that I have ready for this project. Not all of them are usable though. We got some fortune ones which I need to keep, but the silk touch will come in good. Because we're going to be building this mob spawner underground, it means I can get a lot of smooth stone and I won't have to smelt cobblestone as much. And that's good because I'm running out of coal, but I'll probably get a lot more of that digging out an area for this mob spawner. So I've already picked the location, and the way I did it was I just tried to pick the most central point on the island, and then the central point must have been around here somewhere. and then I noticed this sort of dip in the ground over here, so I thought maybe this would be the best place to start the mob spawner. And I've started laying out a rough idea and thinking about how I want to do this, but it's going to take a lot of time to test and make sure that we pick the right layout and get everything right. So I'm going to actually do some of this in creative mode, but anyway, this is the basic idea that I have. I want each level in the mob spawner to be a cross, and this is one part of the cross. You can see I started building the second and didn't get finished, so let's just place a bit more of this. So the 2 wide gap that we have here between the netherrack is where the water's going to go, and it's going to flow all the way down to the end. And so each part of the cross will bring all the water into the centre, and then we're going to have a 4x4 area in the middle, and in that I want to build a Mobavator for the mobs. And we had trouble with the sheep and the cows in the Mobavator I tried to build before, but they were 1.5 tall, and I think that has something to do with it. So I want to test this all first on my server and make sure that we build something that will work, so I'll find out if the Mobavator in the middle works. So then around this we're just going to have some basic spawn pads, no water flush, no nothing like that, no piston pushers. It's going to be something like this with half slabs every so often to stop spider spawning, but I've got to check all of that, and this is part of why I really need to test it. So it'll be something like that with these blocks being half slabs. In fact, we might be able to squeeze a few extra spawn areas by coming back like this. So one of the other things I want to test is putting signs on the side of the blocks, because a lot of people say that doesn't make any difference anymore, and they're probably right, but I've also heard people say that trapdoors had the same effect. So one thing I want to try is putting in trapdoors, and I'll probably make one mob spawner with signs and one with trapdoors and see which one is fastest. And when I'm in creative mode as well, I'll be figuring out the layout, because as well as putting in half slabs, I also want to put in lighting as well, so we can turn this thing on and off. And by the way, the other side of this netherrack there would be a wall, so I don't want the pads being too big. They're 3 blocks away from the water, and I think if it was any further than that it'd be quite a long time before they wander off and fall in. So I think the best thing to do now is start building a mock-up of this in creative mode. Here we are on my server, and I've set up a flat world for us to test this mob spawner in, and straight away I've run into something that I didn't really think about, and I need to test it. So what we have are these 5 half slabs on either side, and over on this side I've tried to maximise the amount of spawn area around them. So all of these wooden blocks are where the mobs will spawn, and if you don't know what the half slabs are for, it's to stop spiders spawning, and I really just don't want spiders in my system. They can usually cause a lot of hassle. So anyway, what I was thinking is that if a mob spawns over here, it's 5 blocks away from the water, so the amount of time it takes it to actually make its way to the water and fall in, it could actually be worth having a smaller spawner area and having mobs spawn closer to the water, so they would only be 3 blocks away. So what I'm going to do is build a mob spawner with these spawn pads, and then another one with the smaller ones, and see which one is fastest. Okay, here we have the 2 different designs. On the left we've got the one with more spawnable areas, and on the right we have the one with less. And the way I want to test this is, first of all I need to condition the entire map, so I'm going to remove all of the grass and replace it with half slabs. And then what we're going to do is make sure we build these below the sky limit, because if we go the old sky limit, because if we go above the old sky limit it's going to check more area and slow down spawning rates. So I'm probably going to remove a big chunk of the land to fit this in. But anyway, we're going to have 10 layers on each spawner, and they're going to be equally positioned from each other. And then we're going to put a big area underneath that the mobs can fall down into and get killed by fall damage. So I'll stand at an equal distance from both of them further back like this, and we'll just let the mobs spawn and fall out naturally. And then after a while we'll stop the test, maybe about 4 minutes before the items despawn, and then we'll go down and check and see how many items we get on each spawner. And in case you're wondering, the amount of spawnable areas in this one is 328, and over here we have 192. So if we do 10 layers, we've got 3,280 areas on this that the mobs can spawn in, and 1,920 on this one. So I've conditioned the world by just removing all of the other blocks, and all we've got left is bedrock. Mobs can't spawn on bedrock, so the only place they can spawn is inside our mob spawner. And I've also decided to test them one at a time, because what I realised is that one has more spawn area than the other one, so it's naturally going to get more mobs inside it. So by testing them one at a time, we get to see what's actually faster, having the mobs go to the water quicker or having more spawn area. So now what I'm going to do is go all the way down to the bottom here. I think I'm just going to stand over here for 5 minutes. I'll get rid of all of those items first, and then we'll do a test and see how many drops we get. I've just finished our first test, and the way I did this was I walked up to all the items and picked them all up, and as I walked away I started a timer. So I got rid of all those items, and then after 4 minutes of standing behind this glowstone wall, I went and picked up the rest of the items, and then I put them into this chest. So the first thing you'll notice is that we'll have string as well, and that means that spiders are actually spawning in there, and I've watched a few fall out. There goes one right now. So I've misplaced all of my half slabs, and I'm not going to do the test twice, because what I've realised is that the principle probably still applies of what we're testing, which is less spawner area but closer to the water streams. So I'm going to do the exact same thing now on the larger spawner, and then after that I guess we'll have to pick which one we're going to go with and rearrange all the half slabs. But the test that I'm going to do with the larger spawner, it's going to be built in the exact same position, so the centre of the larger spawner will be exactly where that bit is, and it will be 10 layers tall as well. I've just finished doing the second test, and I can tell you that we actually get more items from the smaller spawner. Let's have a look at those numbers. They're all in the 30s, 40s, 50s for arrows. If we go have a look at them on here, you can see they're in the 20s, and bone is the only one that's equal to the amount of bone we got there, but everything else is a fair bit less. So I think it's fair to say that actually having the smaller spawner with the mobs closer to the water streams is best, and I've noticed it myself while standing here. You can hear that the mobs aren't falling down as quickly, and also when I walked in to pick up my items, no mobs fell down for quite some time as well. So anyway, now we need to work on redesigning this to make sure that spiders don't spawn. I've repositioned all of the half slabs, and now spiders shouldn't spawn inside of our mob spawner. So I was under the impression that the way it worked was the game would check a random block, let's say it was this one here, then it would check that block was okay for a mob to spawn on. So if it was a normal block like this, it would be fine. If it was a half slab, it couldn't spawn. But for a spider, it would check all the blocks around it, and that would be a 3x3 area, and despite a spider only being 2 blocks, it spawns it in the centre of a single block. So by having it here, I didn't think it would be possible for the mobs to spawn, because there's always this 2 block at the edge, so the spiders shouldn't be able to pick anywhere to spawn. But what I think happens is it can actually pick this and spawn it above air blocks as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So I guess at the moment, if it chooses a block near the edge here, it's going to detect the half slab as well. So that's why I think that this one will work, although I think it could mean that a spider could spawn here. If it chose to spawn there, there's wood all around it and then 2 air blocks. So if we get 1 or 2 spiders come through, then we'll know that we need extra half slabs at the end here. I found a spider in the mob spawner, and this isn't the first one I found. And like all of the others, I found them down this end of the room, so I think that's a good indicator that I was right about how they spawn. So we're going to have to redesign this end of the room, and then we can move on to adding a lighting system. For the end of the room, we can stop spiders spawning by placing a half slab in either one of these 2 blocks. And I normally like to do things symmetrical, but this means we get an extra 4 spaces of spawning area per layer, and that slightly increases the spawn rate. So I'm going to just put 1 in for now. But the reason why it's like this is because the places that the spiders can spawn are these 2 bits right here. So if you look, there's air blocks all around them on either side, and then both of them intersect with these 2 blocks here. So you only need a half slab in one of them, and then you'll stop the spiders spawning on these 2 blocks. As well as stopping spiders from spawning, we also want to be able to turn this mob spawner on and off. So I've added in these glowstone blocks, and I've been checking the light levels, and these light up every spawnable area. So if we were to replace these with redstone lamps, they'd emit the same light level, and then that way we can wire it all up with redstone and turn the mob spawner on and off. So the redstone is going to be quite simple to understand, except it was a little bit tricky to figure out, but I've got a solution for the problem that we encountered, but first of all we want to power the block under our first redstone lamp, which we've done, and then we're going to transfer the power to the next redstone lamp and the one after that, like this. Now the tricky bit was that each layer of the mob spawner is 5 blocks tall, so we needed to use redstone wiring which was vertical and could also make it easy for us to power each layer, and the way we've done that is like this. So the problem is that you have your first block here, and that's level with the bottom of our first 5 layers, and going up like this, then you're going to become uneven because this is the first block of our second layer. Now this is only a problem if you use a wiring method like this, where you go up like this. You're going to run into problems, but because we're doing it this way, the power is off or on one side. So as you can see, the torch is powering the redstone there, and then if we go up to the top, the block is now level with the redstone, and the torch underneath it is what's powering the block and then powering the redstone. So this redstone here would be the same redstone on the next layer that we see here. So if I put on a torch underneath, I'm going to turn it all off now. You can see that torch is turned off, so the wire is no longer powered, and then that torch has turned off, so this block is no longer powered, and that redstone turns off as well. So what I plan to do is have these columns of redstone torches going up. I'm going to have them at either end of the mob spawner, so we have one on this side, one on that side, and then the same thing at the other two ends. And then at the bottom we'll wire them together so we can control if we want to turn on all of them or half of them, and there's no real need for that. There may be some testing that I want to do in the future that means I might want less mobs coming through the spawner, so it might be useful, but it's nice to have that kind of option and feature. Fuck me. The wiring that we have here in this corner I'm going to copy and put on the other side over here, and then do the same thing on those two corners over there. And when we wire it up at the bottom, I'm going to make it so that you can actually choose how many lights you want to turn on. So you could turn on half the spawner at once or a quarter, and there's no real reason for that other than it's nice to have the option. Although I did think that if I were to do some testing with mobs later on, I might want less mobs coming out of the mob spawner, so it's probably a good idea to do that anyway. And then around one side of the spawner I'm going to make the walls here out of glass, and that's only when we build it, not while we're testing it. And that's because I want to have an observation deck so we can walk up and down and actually look into the mob spawner as well. I've now wired up both sides of 2 layers of this mob spawner, and this means I can MC edit in the next 4, so we'd have 10 layers in total. And what I'm going to do is test this mob trap again, and I'm also going to copy it twice and test it with signs going along the insides of these blocks and also trapdoors, and see if they increase the rates at all. Okay, here are the 3 mob spawners. In the middle we have signs, on the left we have hatch doors, and on the right we have none. And I've just gone around and taken all of the torches off the bottom, so all of the lights inside have been turned on, and I've watched the spawn rates lower down, but I will check that all the mobs are outside of each of the spawners before I turn them back on. So this is the one with signs, the one over there is got nothing I think, and this one has hatch doors. Yeah, that's right. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to turn one on at a time, and then I'm going to stand directly underneath it, and I'm going to time it for 5 minutes and see how much loot we get from that, and then we'll be able to compare the results and see which one's the fastest. I've finished testing each of the 3 mob spawners, and now we can take a look at the results. The one with no signs or trapdoors has an average of about 38, and the same for signs as well. It's pretty much the same sort of drop ratio, although we got some ink sacs as well because there were squids spawning in the water. And then the trapdoor is significantly lower. You can see we've got some 27s, 26. So it seems to be a little bit lower if you use trapdoors, and that kind of makes sense because there's more area for them to walk on. So if they walk near the edge of the block and then turn, they don't actually fall in. So that would be my explanation for why that's slightly lower. So it seems fairly pointless. They did say that they'd fix the things with signs, and there's not much difference there. So I'm probably going to go ahead and build these without signs. Now that we know what mob spawner we're building, it's time to build the Mobavator in the middle of it. And I haven't built one of these in the middle of a mob trap before, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge. And also, because our each layer is 5 blocks high, it's going to make it a little bit tricky as well, because we're always going to need air blocks at this level where it meets up with the water, and then above that we have water, then air, then water, then air, and as you can see the water's now at the same level as the water above, and we don't want this because then the streams are going to join up and it's not going to push the mobs into the middle. So at the moment I'm struggling to find a solution for this, and I just wanted to show you the problem was that if we have 2 blocks of water like this, then we're going to have water at this level, which we want, and then air blocks at this level here. So then on each layer that we build we're going to have a bit in the Mobavator with 2 water, and we can't do 2 air because then the mobs will get to this bit and they won't rise up any further. So in order to hold back this water, the ones below we can just place signs, by the way. That'll suppress the water from escaping, but these ones here it's going to be a little bit tricky to do, and I need to do a test and see if mobs can spawn on a block that has a sign in it, and if so it'll be fine because then we can place signs on top of signs like that. But it does mean we could end up sacrificing spawn area, and one of the things I thought of doing is actually having a pillar like this and doing that on each side, but then you end up with a block here that, you know, the mob's going to take a little bit longer before it walks around into the water. So I need to do some testing, double checking everything and see what I can come up with. As I'm building this, it's already starting to look a bit awkward. The amount of signs you have to place to hold the water is quite a lot, as you can see, and I've even got to place some under here, and this is okay because we've got blocks underneath, but further up we don't have any blocks to place them onto. So I placed down this fence gate, and I've avoided using these because they close when water updates around them. And how can I show you that? I place another one and open it, then the water updates, or I think it's just a block update actually, and it shuts again. But once it's all finished and you open them all, they should all stay open, so I might end up building them with these. Okay, a lot has just happened. As you can see, we have the finished Mobavator here. And yeah, I don't think anyone's worked on the Mobavator for quite some time, and now that we've got all these new blocks to take advantage of, this has actually become quite effective. And of course it's never going to be as effective in terms of mob spawning as dropping the mobs straight out of one, but if you want to build a Mobavator and take the mobs up to the top, then I think what we have here is a really efficient design, and I really would have liked to have taken you through the whole design process, but it just kind of happened a bit spontaneously. So I was watching EthosLab video. I didn't like the way I had all these signs floating around the water trying to contain it, and I remember that he'd done a video on a Mobavator a long time ago, and he had this really nice looking glass tube in the middle. I was a little bit hesitant to use that at first because we'd be blocking off the corners and lowering spawn areas, only by 4 blocks, but still it counts, and also stopping mobs from walking into the trap as well. So I was watching that video, working on it a little bit, and then I thought I need to ask someone else. I need to work on this with someone else because it's really good to bounce ideas with other people. So I asked a friend of mine who plays on JL's server, and his name is BRMC888, and I don't think he has a YouTube channel, but yeah, big thanks to him because we worked on this together and we had so many good ideas between us, and yeah, this thing just kept getting better and better. So one of the first things we did was start using pressure plates around the bottom, and we've even replaced those with half slabs now, which are even more effective. And well, so much happened, I guess. We kept just improving and improving, placing signs in the correct positions, figuring everything out with the corners and getting all the water to flow to the middle. And the last things we done were pretty cool. Before we had these half slabs at the top here, we actually had glass panes, and what was cool about this is we were taking advantage of the new hitboxes and having smaller things around the water. So instead of having it all encaged in glass and the mobs having to go underneath and they get slowed down by that, we kind of opened it up and yet kept the water in the same place. And eventually it came down to this, and using half slabs is really good because we got them at the bottom and the top, so the mob comes in and it pops straight up onto here and starts to rise and goes into the middle. And if it is bobbing up and down, that's not really going to reach that height of the half slab, so it's going to come straight up into the water anyway. So well, there's a lot to do with this, and I guess you can have a look at it yourself, because what I plan to do is put out a schematic with this episode for you to download to check out this mob spawner. So there's one more thing that we're going to change, and that's because of the water. If you can see here, I put the water back one block at the back there, and that's because where we place these half slabs we can actually extend back the water, and that means that we can remove these two blocks as well. So at the end here I'm going to redesign the end so we've got more spawnable areas, and one thing to consider with that actually is that the lighting's okay and it will reach it. And there we go, that's going to be the finished mob spawner, and this is what I'm going to build legitimately in GeoMine on Hermitcraft, and I'm going to be doing this all with the same materials: wood, sandstone half slabs, redstone lamps, all of it. And yeah, the best thing about this is it looks really cool. But if we go further up, you can also see some of the old designs we had where we were using glass panes and we were using pressure pads instead of half slabs, and we did actually have fence gates in the middle there where you can see there's signs, and the pressure pads are actually closing the fence gates and opening them again when mobs were standing on them. But anyway, enough talk about this. We tested it like crazy. It's really good. I'm really happy with this project, so I'm just going to revise the size of the spawn room, and then I'm going to rebuild the whole mob spawner and wire up the bottom as well so you can turn it on and off, and I'll put that into a map for a download. At last I finished building this mob spawner. I've redesigned the rooms a little bit to add an extra bit of spawning space in, and there's only one problem with this, is that if I'd have known about that earlier, building the Mobavator would have given me more room. I could have actually made this a little bit bigger, but it would have meant repositioning the redstone lamps or possibly adding more, so I haven't done that, and that's the only downside to this project. But anyway, this is really cool, and I've actually turned this off now so all the lights are on, and we can just go down here and see just how many mobs are pumping up through the Mobavator. Anyway, let's stop here and have a look. So yeah, I had to put two half slabs here because although one would have been sufficient to stop mob spawning, the light level where these two blocks are is 7, and mobs can spawn at that light level, so that's why we have 2 at the end there. And yeah, the stream just goes one block further back. And there you go, that's the mob spawner. So now I have to prepare for the construction of this mob spawner, and I'm going to do it in stages. First thing I want to do is torch up the rest of this island. We've done everything else behind me and around these sides. It's just this area over here near where the mob spawner is going to be that we need to do. In fact, I've been thinking about moving that to this position because it seems to be a little bit more central. But anyway, the second stage I'm not sure, but I think it would be either gathering resources to build this because I'm going to build it all out of wood, and the other stage would be to dig out the area that we're going to build it in. So I actually want to dig down all the way down to the bedrock level first, and then yeah, build it upwards once everything's been dug out. So I think I might do something special with that, like a time lapse, so we can see the process of digging out a huge area of land going downwards. But anyway, there's a lot of preparations and stuff to consider. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was quite different, and I had a lot of fun going through the design process of making the mob spawner and Mobavator. And again, special thanks to BRMC888 for helping me out with the Mobavator. That was a lot of fun. And there's a link in the description box to Planet MC where you can get the schematic for the mob spawner, and also a link to download the map that I was using to test them all. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.